Hello, welcome to my channel. This is Tom the SCAPEGOAT. I'll be reading to you some books from my library, some books from my hard drives, and generally just some books that are interesting. I'm going to start off with something easy and work my way as I make more and more videos and playlists into the more complex things, as I'm not used to reading out loud at all. Let's start with Isaac Asimov, The Last Question. The Last Question. The last question was asked for the first time, half in jest, on May 21st, 2061, at a time when humanity first stepped into the light. The question came about as a result of a $5 bet over highballs, and it happened in this way. Alexander Adel and Bertram Lupov were two of the faithful attendants of Multivac. As well as any human beings could, they knew what lay behind the cold, clicking, flashing face, miles and miles of face of that giant computer. They had at least a vague notion of the general plan of relays and circuits that had long since grown past the point where any single human could possibly have a firm grasp of the whole. Multivac was self-adjusting and self-correcting. It had to be, for nothing human could adjust and correct it quickly enough or even adequately enough. So Adel and Lupov attended the monstrous giant only lightly and superficially, yet as well as any men could. They fed it data, adjusted questions to its needs, and translated the answers that were issued. Certainly, they, and all others like them, were fully entitled to share in the glory that was Multivac. For decades, Multivac had helped design the ships and plot the trajectories that enabled man to reach the Moon, Mars, and Venus. But past that, Earth's poor resources could not support the ships. Too much energy was needed for the long trips. Earth exploited its coal and uranium with increasing efficiency, but there was only so much of both. But slowly, Multivac learned enough to answer deeper questions more fundamentally, and on May 14th, 2061, what had been theory became fact. The energy of the sun was stored, converted, and utilized directly on a planet-wide scale. All Earth turned off its burning coal, its fissioning uranium, and flipped the switch that connected all of it to a small station 1 mile in diameter, circling the Earth at half the distance of the Moon. All Earth ran by invisible beams of sun power. 7 days had not sufficed to dim the glory of it, and Adel and Lupov finally managed to escape from public function and to meet in quiet where no one would think of looking for him, in the deserted underground chambers where portions of the mighty buried body of Multivac showed. Unattended, idling, sorting data with contented, lazy clickings, Multivac, too, had earned its vacation, and the boys appreciated that. They had no intention, originally, of disturbing it. They had brought a bottle with them, and their only concern at the moment was to relax in the company of each other and the bottle. It's amazing when you think of it, said Adel. His broad face had lines of weariness in it, and he stirred his drink slowly with a glass rod, watching the cubes of ice slur clumsily about. All the energy we can possibly ever use for free. Enough energy, if we wanted to draw on it, to melt all Earth into a big drop of impure liquid iron, and still never miss the energy so used. All the energy we could ever use, forever, never, never. Lupov cocked his head sideways. He had a trick of doing that when he wanted to be contrary, and he wanted to be contrary now, partly because he had to carry the ice and glassware. Not forever, he said. Hell, just about forever, till the sun runs down, Bert. No, that's not forever. All right, then. Billions and billions of years. 20 billion, maybe. You satisfied? Lupov put his fingers through his thinning hair, as though to reassure himself that some was still left, and he sipped gently at his own drink. 20 billion years isn't forever. Well, it will last our time, won't it? Yeah, but so would the coal and uranium. All right, but now we can hook up each individual spaceship to the solar station and it can go to Pluto and back a million times without ever worrying about fuel. You can't do that on coal and uranium. Ask Multivac if you don't believe me. I don't have to ask Multivac, I know that. And stop running down what Multivac's done for us, said Adele, blazing it up. It did all right. Who says it didn't? What I say is that the sun won't last forever, that's all. Oh, my bad. I'll start the whole paragraph over. Who says it didn't? What I say is the sun won't last forever, that's all I'm saying. We're safe for 20 billion years, but then what? Lupov pointed a slightly shaking finger at another. And don't say we'll switch to another sun. There was silence for a while. Adele put his glass to his lips, only occasionally, and Lupov's eyes closed slowly. They rested. Then Lupov's eyes snapped open. You're thinking we'll switch to another sun when ours is done, aren't you? I'm not thinking. Sure you are. You're weak on logic. That's the trouble with you. You're like the guy in the story who was caught in a sudden shower, who ran to a grove of trees and got under one. He wasn't worried, you see, because he figured when one tree got wet through, he would just get under another one. Yeah, I get it, said Adele. Don't shout. But when the sun is done, other stars will be gone too. Darn right they will, muttered Lupov. It all had a beginning in the original cosmic explosion, whatever that was, and it'll all have an end when all the stars run down. Some run down faster than others. Hell, the giants won't last 100 million years. The sun will last 20 billion years, and maybe the dwarves will last 100 billion for all the good they are. But just give us 1 trillion years and everything will be dark. Entropy has to increase to maximum, that's all. Yeah, I know all about entropy, said Adele, standing on his dignity. The hell you do? I know as much as you do. When you know everything's got to run down someday. All right, who says they won't? You did, you poor sap. You said all the energy we needed forever. You said forever. It was Adele's turn to be contrary. Well, maybe we can build them up again someday, he said. Nah, never. Well, why not? Someday. Never. Ask Multivac. No, you ask Multivac. I dare you. $5 says it can't be done. Adele was just drunk enough to try, just sober enough to be able to phrase the necessary symbols and operations into a question which, in words, might have corresponded to this. Will mankind one day, without the net expenditure of energy, be able to restore the sun to its full youthfulness, even after it has died of old age? Or maybe it could be put more simply like this. How can the net amount of entropy of the universe be massively decreased? Multivac fell dead and silent. The slow flashing of lights ceased. The distant sounds of clicking relays ended. Then, just as the frightened technicians felt as they could hold their breath no longer, there was a sudden springing to life of the teletype attached to that portion of the Multivac. 5 words were printed. Insufficient data for a meaningful answer. No bet, whispered Lupov, and they left hurriedly. By next morning, the two, plagued with throbbing head and cottony mouth, had forgotten the whole incident. Girard, Girardin, and Girardette 1 and 2 watched the starry picture in the visiplate change as the passage through hyperspace was completed in its non-time lapse. At once, the even powdering of stars gave way to the predominance of a single, bright marble disk centered. That is X-23, said Girard confidently. His thin hands clamped tightly behind his back, and the knuckles whitened. The little Girardettes, both girls, had experienced the hyperspace passage for the first time in their lives, and were self-conscious over the momentary sensation of inside-outedness. They buried their giggles and chased one another wildly about their mother, screaming, "We reached X-23! We've reached X-23! We've—" "Quiet, children," said Girardin sharply. "Are you sure, Girard?" "What is there to be sure about?" asked Girard, glancing up at the bulge of featureless metal just under the ceiling. It ran the length of the room, disappearing through the wall at either end. It was as long as the ship. Gerard scarcely knew a thing about the thick rod of metal, except that it was called a microvac, that one asked it questions if it wished, that if one did not, it still had its task of guiding the ship to a pre-ordered destination, of feeding on energies of the various subgalactic power stations, of computing the equations for the hyperspatial jumps. Gerard and his family had only to wait and live in their comfortable residence quarters of the ship. Someone had once told Gerard that the AC at the end of microvac stood for analog computer in ancient English, but he was on the edge of forgetting even that. Geraldine's eyes were moist as she watched the visiplate. I can't help it. I feel funny about leaving Earth. Why, for Pete's sake, demanded Gerard. We had nothing there. We'll have everything on X-23. You won't be alone. You won't be a pioneer. There are over 1 million people on the planet already. Good Lord. Our great-grandchildren will be looking for new worlds because X-23 will be overcrowded. Then, after a reflexive pause, I tell you, it's a lucky thing the computers worked out interstellar travel the way the race has grown. I know, said Geraldine miserably. Geraldette 1 said promptly, our microvac is the best microvac in the world. Yeah, I think so too, said Gerard, tousling her hair. It was a nice feeling to have a microvac of your own, and Gerard was glad he had part of his generation. He was a part of his generation and no other. In his father's youth, the only computers had been tremendous machines like taking up 100 square miles of land. There was only one to a planet. Planetary ACs, they were called. They had been growing in size steadily for 1,000 years. Then, all at once, came refinement. In place of transistors had come molecular valves so that even the largest planetary AC could be put into space only half the volume of a spaceship. Gerard felt uplifted, as he always did when he thought that his own personal microvac was many times more complicated than that of the ancient and primitive multivac that had first tamed the sun, and almost as complicated as Earth's planetary AC, the largest, that had first solved the problem of hyperspatial travel and had made trips to the stars possible. So many stars, so many planets, sighed Geraldine, busy with her own thoughts. I suppose families will be going out to new planets forever the way we are now. Not forever, said Gerard with a smile. It'll stop someday, but not for billions of years, many billions. Even the stars run down, you know. Entropy must increase. So each of these recordings will be 15 minutes long, roughly. I'll continue reading the last question on the next portion. This is one of two.